Hello, this is Leslie Deer, and I'm here to talk to you today about a text that you will find in a histology lab. So what is histology? Everyone has probably had a blood test by this point in their life, and that is referred to as cytology. The cyto means the study of cells, usually suspended in some sort of liquid, blood, or urine. Histology is not the study of history. Histo means tissue. Like cytology, it still looks at cells, but it looks at them together in relation to each other in a larger conglomerate that makes up organs and larger tissue elements within the body. The way histologists do this is they receive a surgical specimen that is treated with various chemicals. It is then embedded into a paraffin block, which is a type of wax, and very thin slices of this are put on slides. And then those slides are treated with more chemicals to dye them and give the tissue elements colors. Because normally tissue is invisible. That slide then eventually ends up under a microscope of a pathologist, and a pathologist is the person who is responsible for identifying and diagnosing what they're seeing on the slide. They are required by law to make a visual examination of tissue before they can make a formal diagnosis of a certain type of cancer or grade a malignancy, or to call something benign. It could just be some other sort of neoplasm, but they're not allowed to make that call until they've actually looked at it under a microscope. What does it mean when you see this guy in the Histo Lab? Does it mean pirates work here? It means the pirates that work here like to drink poison. That's probably the correct answer right there. Actually, all three of these are correct. When you see a skull and crossbones, historically that has meant death or danger. If you wanted to join a band of pirates, they wanted you to be reminded constantly that your impending death is a possibility. Basically what I'm saying here is that symbolic meanings are constantly evolving, and you're going to have to be aware of the specific working meaning of these symbols that you find in your lab, and you're going to see these everywhere. In order to do that, you have to refer to a hazard key. Here we have a hazard key. As you can see, there's a lot of them, and there are literally thousands of these in the world. Individual labs may even have their own hazard symbols. It's not that easy to navigate, though. And this key here has some text on the right. It might be in alphabetical order, or it might be sorted based on types of hazards. This gives you a little bit more maneuverability and being able to locate your hazard. This key relies very heavily on the visual impact of the actual symbols, the icons, to help you locate the information you might need. The National Fire Protection Agency's hazard diamond is going to be found in conjunction with every other hazard symbol in your laboratory. This was devised specifically for firemen. When they enter a lab, they don't have time to decipher what all those meanings are on all those hazard things. So they just need to know if something's going to blow up or if they should touch it. They don't need to know the specifics about chemicals. But this is very useful. The red diamond on the top indicates your fire hazard or your flammability. The blue diamond on your left is going to be a biohazard, and your yellow symbol on the right is going to be reactivity or explosive potential. The numbers that you see will change all the time, and they reflect the level of danger in those particular areas. With a 0 meaning it's completely harmless, it's inert, it's not going to blow up. Number 3 meaning it's very dangerous, and number 4 being potentially deadly. Your white diamond on the bottom refers to very specific concerns. There's only a handful of these. The one you see here with the W with a line across it tells you that this cannot be mixed with water. When you see a blue 3 and this white don't mix with water, this tells me that it's probably an acid, because acid is very dangerous to a person's skin and it cannot be mixed with water. This also has a key, but that's it. One page. All you need to know is, be reminded of what these things stand for. Here's another one. It helps you to navigate the fire diamond. It's very, very good. All of your hazard keys are going to be available to you in this notebook located in the lab. It should be very obvious. It's also going to hold all your MSD forms, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And there's also going to be a very in-depth document called a chemical hygiene plan. Every laboratory has one. It basically tells you everything you need to know about your lab, what type of chemicals are handled there, and the dangers they pose. Every employee has a right to know the types of chemicals that are in the lab and the types of dangers they pose. Here are 3 examples of university chemical hygiene plan cover pages. There's something called an ECP also, which is an exposure control plan, which deals with infectious and biological materials. A histology lab is going to have both a CHP and an ECP because it handles both chemicals and potentially infectious material. So let's have a look inside. Here is your index page for your CHP. It's going to be very simply written in bulleted format, just so you can find your topic and get right to it, because this generally, has your safety information. If you have a spill, you need to rifle through this pretty quickly to find your page so you can find out what you need to be doing. This is a standard operating procedure sheet for glacial acetic acid. The first thing you're going to find here is hazard diamonds and the types of labeling that needs to go on your bottles. Also, there's a safety overview. It's going to tell you your PPEs you need to use that you need to have on when you're handling it, how to handle it, safety overview, research lab procedures, how to dispose of, how to store, all that type of stuff, very specific to this particular chemical. This page in your CHP addresses storage issues, very specifically reactive chemicals. It's going to tell you exactly how to handle various issues. Here's another thing, waste disposal. Where do you dispose of certain things? What can be mixed with what? How do you have to label these things? All of this stuff is really important because you don't want to put something in styrofoam and have it burn through the bottom, and now you've got even worse mess on your hand. Or you don't want to create a bomb for the back of a trash truck. So all of these things are really important. Your CHP is going to be updated all the time. You may find yourself having to rewrite or update it yourself, and this is a very important document. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration has very specific legally binding rules about what type of information must be made available about any type of chemical that's going to be used in any lab. They send out a template to manufacturers, and there's no variation. Every single bit of information requested has to be on that form. That form is called an MSDS, a Material Safety Data Sheet, and that makes up the huge portion of your safety binder. It's basically the Bible of chemical behavior that exists in your lab. Another type of document that you're going to find in your CHP is accident and chemical exposure logs. It's pretty self-explanatory. When there's an accident or an exposure, you have to notate it. These things get reported to OSHA, and it's in case someone in the future comes down with some kind of bizarre cancer, they can look back and say, well, in such and so year they were exposed to a certain type of chemical in the lab, and now they're coming back with a problem, so that chemical isn't necessarily as safe as we thought it was. It's for sort of future reference and general scientific knowledge. Another type of log that you will experience in the lab that is more process oriented is going to be temperature and machine logs. And this has to do with quality control on the work you're actually doing. It's where you start to eliminate variables that might affect your results. You might have a machine that's going on the fritz, and you're not going to know this unless you have something to compare it with. So a lot of the readouts on your machines, you need to just sort of establish a baseline. Here's a typical temperature log. Here's a machine log, maintenance schedule log. When you're working in a lab with chemicals, chemicals get changed out all the time. Sometimes when you get a fresh batch of chemicals, it's going to alter your results. You're going to get, something's going to come back really dark. And if you go and check your maintenance log, you see, oh, so-and-so replaced the hematoxylin with some new stuff, and it's, so this is okay. Other times you'll find that the wrong chemical, the wrong reagent ended up in there, and you're like, okay, well, we know it happened here. We can go ahead and swap this out and, continue from that point, basically. Machine maintenance logs, if you're working with fresh tissue, sometimes like a lung sample will come down and it will show up positive for TB. That machine has to be taken out of commission and completely decontaminated before it can be used again. And they're going to want to know about that kind of stuff, and it's going to be all logged for reference. What you're looking at here are some tissue samples that have been stained with what we call special stains. And these are basically stains that are more complex and difficult compared to your standard H&E. These stains come with a recipe card called a stain card, and it just basically outlines the differences and how you're supposed to handle these particular stains. There's a more complex chemical mixing that's involved. Here are two stain cards from the same manufacturer. You're going to have information about how to mix your chemicals and a procedure list that's basically like a recipe. You will find a photograph or some kind of image with it to give you an example of what your results are supposed to look like. Histology is basically a medical imaging field. It's any type of scientific writing revolving around it is going to be essentially in the same format as other medical fields. There's going to be academic journals that publish periodically that might have specific issues specific to histology, but they're the same as what we're used to seeing. The internet is basically our library these days, and every field, every organization, every manufacturer is going to have their own website, and there's going to be all kinds of information out there, and there's probably going to be areas where you can connect with other people in your field and ask questions and sort of in real time. But there's, tons of stuff out there. It's pretty standard also. I just want to recap very quickly the types of documents we sort of loosely explored. The main areas are going to be safety, process, and academic. Under safety, we have your hazard diamonds and keys, your chemical hygiene plan, which is your master plan, material safety data sheets, and accident logs, which will be found in that binder. In process, we have quality control and maintenance logs, stain cards, and academics, we have your typical scientific journal writing and organization websites. Well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thanks for your time.